The alert came in the dead of night, not a missile launch, not a cyber attack, but something far more alarming, something that would send shockwaves through every level of command. At a listening post in Hawaii, a young naval analyst stared at his screen in disbelief. Two Chinese carrier strike groups, the Shandong and Liaoning, had crossed the first island chain, a move that had only existed in war games and classified briefings until now. This was no exercise, it was a statement, a deliberate, unmistakable signal to the world that the old boundaries no longer applied. For decades, the first island chain, from Japan through Taiwan and the Philippines, had marked the edge of China's naval reach, a line vigilantly patrolled by the US Navy, a symbol of American commitment to its allies and the region. Now, that line had been crossed, not with a barrage of missiles, but with the silent advance of steel hulls and jet-black decks. The Pentagon was jolted awake. The Secretary of Defense and Joint Chiefs convened an emergency meeting, their faces grim as they pored over satellite images and intelligence reports. The Chinese flotilla was heading for the Philippine Sea, moving steadily toward the second island chain, the backbone of American power in the Pacific, and a region considered vital to U.S. strategic interests. Every U.S. ship, submarine, and satellite was now focused on this unprecedented move, tracking every maneuver, every change in formation, every radio transmission. The rules had changed overnight. What was once unthinkable was now reality, and the playbook was being rewritten in real time. On the USS Ronald Reagan, east of the Philippines, the captain received his orders. Hold the line, no matter the cost. The weight of history pressed down on every decision. But where was the line now? The enemy had redrawn the map without firing a shot, shifting the boundaries of power and influence with a single bold maneuver. Sailors and pilots prepared for the unknown, checking equipment, reviewing emergency procedures, the hum of the ship's engines echoing the tension that gripped every soul aboard. This was the moment strategists had warned about, the culmination of China's decades-long naval buildup, a transformation fueled by relentless shipbuilding and technological innovation. They had studied every U.S. tactic, every weapon, every doctrine, learning from every exercise, every deployment, every misstep. Now, they were putting theory into practice, testing the resolve of the world's most powerful navy. This wasn't just about ships or territory, it was a direct challenge to the post-World War II order, a confrontation that would ripple through every capital from Washington to Tokyo to Beijing. The world watched, holding its breath, wondering if the long peace underwritten by U.S. naval power was about to end, and what a new era of uncertainty might bring. The showdown nobody saw coming was already here, unfolding in real time on the world's largest stage. The vast Pacific, once a buffer of safety and distance, suddenly felt very small, its waters crowded with warships and the weight of history. The U.S. Navy's dominance was being tested in real time, its sailors and aviators facing a challenge unlike any in generations. The Chinese move was bold, calculated, and impossible to ignore, a message to the world that the balance of power was shifting. The stakes, nothing less than the balance of power in Asia, and perhaps the future of the global order itself. The U.S. had to respond, but how? Every option carried risks, every move would be scrutinized by allies and adversaries alike. The next moves would define the future of the Pacific, setting the tone for decades to come. The line in the sand had been crossed, not just on a map, but in the minds of leaders and the hearts of those who serve. And there was no turning back. The world would never be the same. For 75 years, U.S. aircraft carriers have ruled the oceans, floating cities of power, unmatched in their ability to project force across the globe. These massive ships are not just symbols of American might, but the very backbone of U.S. naval dominance, able to respond to crises anywhere on Earth at a moment's notice. Each carrier carries over 70 advanced aircraft, from strike fighters to surveillance planes, all maintained by a highly trained crew working around the clock. And they never sail alone. Each carrier is protected by a formidable strike group, destroyers, cruisers, and submarines, forming a shield of firepower and technology. But while the U.S. Navy has long dominated the seas, China's Navy, once limited to coastal defense, has transformed at breakneck speed, launching new warships at a pace the world has never seen. The Liaoning and Shandong were just the beginning, training platforms for a true blue water fleet, signaling China's intent to become a major maritime power. The U.S. Navy's mission is global, projecting power, deterring adversaries, and supporting allies on every continent, from the Mediterranean to the Pacific. Until recently, China's Navy focused on regional dominance, patrolling its coastline, asserting control over the South China Sea, and denying U.S. access near its shores. To achieve this, China developed so-called carrier-killer missiles like the DF-21D and DF-26, designed to keep U.S. carriers at bay and shift the balance of power in the region. But now, China's strategy is shifting rapidly, moving beyond its own waters and venturing into the open ocean. Deploying two carrier groups beyond the first island chain signals a new ambition. China is now projecting power deep into the Pacific, challenging the US Navy's traditional supremacy. The plan is evolving from a defensive force into a true global navy, conducting joint exercises and extending its reach far from home. The student is ready to challenge the master, and the world is watching as these two giants maneuver for advantage. The Western Pacific is now the arena, a vital crossroads for global trade and security, and the stakes could not be higher. The US and China are on a collision course at sea, their warships shadowing each other in tense encounters that could shape the future. The outcome of this contest will shape not just the future of the region, but the entire world order. The contest has begun, and its consequences will echo for generations. US Pacific strategy is built on the island chains, a series of critical archipelagos stretching across the vast ocean, forming a defensive shield for American interests. The first island chain, Japan, Taiwan, the Philippines, once served as a formidable barrier, containing China's navy and limiting its access to the wider Pacific. The second island chain, anchored by the strategic island of Guam, now stands as America's main line of defense, projecting power deep into the Pacific. Guam, with its advanced airfields and powerful naval bases, is the linchpin. America's unsinkable aircraft carrier, capable of launching operations across the region at a moment's notice. Losing control here would be a strategic disaster, unraveling decades of American dominance in the Pacific and exposing allies to new threats. The Chinese carrier groups aren't just sailing, they're piercing the veil of American security, signaling a bold new era of naval competition. Their goal is clear: prove they can operate inside the second island chain, threatening to isolate US forces and allies, and challenging the status quo. If China can sustain carrier operations here, the military calculus changes dramatically, forcing the US to rethink its entire Pacific posture. US reinforcements from Hawaii or the mainland could be intercepted before reaching the fight, making rapid response far more difficult. The Pentagon is alarmed by this new reality. The message is unmistakable: America's strategic depth is shrinking, and the margin for error is vanishing. The Pacific buffer zone, once a sanctuary for US forces, is no longer secure. Every movement is now watched, every passage contested. China is pushing its defensive perimeter far out to sea, projecting power and influence into waters once dominated by the US Navy. This is a direct assault on the geographic foundation of US power in Asia, challenging decades of American-led security. The strategic map is being redrawn in real time, with boundaries shifting and new threats emerging almost daily. The US must respond with resolve and innovation, or risk losing its Pacific fortress, and with it, the balance of power in Asia. The stakes have never been higher. The future of the Pacific, and America's role in it, hangs in the balance. As the Shandong and Liaoning entered the Philippine Sea, a new force loomed: the Fujian, China's most advanced carrier. Unlike its predecessors, the Fujian boasts electromagnetic catapults, matching America's Ford-class carriers. This leap allows China to launch heavier, more capable aircraft, closing the technology gap. A Fujian-led strike group would be a peer competitor, able to project power far from China's shores. Imagine the Fujian east of Taiwan, the other carriers in the South China Sea, a pincer movement threatening US and allied forces. The Fujian is the centerpiece of a navy ready to challenge American dominance. Its imminent debut is no coincidence. Beijing is flexing its muscles. The current deployment is a dress rehearsal for the Fujian's arrival. The balance of naval power in the Pacific is about to shift, perhaps forever. The dragon's new teeth are almost ready to bite. The Chinese maneuver sent shockwaves through the region. Japan raised its alert, shadowing the Chinese fleet as it passed through the Miyako Strait. In Taiwan, the threat of blockade became real. Jets scrambled, the Navy braced for the worst. Australia, seeing Chinese power closer than ever, doubled down on its US alliance and nuclear subplans. The Philippines, caught in the middle, faced a stark choice about its future. For all these nations, the message was clear: the strategic environment had changed overnight. The era of relying solely on distant American power was over. Hard choices about security could no longer be avoided. In Washington, shock turned to strategy. The USS Ronald Reagan shadowed the Chinese fleet, attack submarines and surveillance planes tracked every move. The USS Carl Vinson was ordered to the region, a show of force and resolve. Two US carrier groups in the Pacific sent a clear message: America would not back down. Allies were reassured. Beijing was warned. Diplomacy kicked into high gear with urgent calls to allies and a direct line to China. Tensions ran high. One mistake could spark catastrophe. The US boxed in the Chinese fleet with presence, not weapons. The goal: de-escalate without ceding ground. It was a high-stakes game of nerves and professionalism. The world watched, waiting for the next move. Pentagon planners feared a trap. What if the Chinese carriers were bait, luring US strike groups into a missile kill box? China's land-based DF-21D and DF-26 missiles could strike deep into the Philippine Sea. The nightmare US carriers focused on the fleet suddenly targeted by a massive missile barrage. Even one hit could cripple a carrier, an unthinkable blow to American prestige. This is China's anti-access strategy, make US intervention too costly to consider. The current standoff could be a test of a mobile A2/AD bubble. The threat was existential and all too real. Tension rippled worldwide. Markets trembled, oil prices spiked, and global supply chains braced for impact. The South China Sea and Taiwan Strait are economic lifelines. Conflict here could trigger a global crisis. On the ships, young sailors stood watch, knowing one wrong move could ignite war. The world's two most powerful navies circled each other, every action scrutinized. News coverage was non-stop. The UN called for calm, but the confrontation was beyond mediation. This was a raw contest of will between superpowers. Each hour without resolution increased the risk of disaster. The long peace felt fragile, ready to shatter at any moment. The world held its breath. After 72 hours, the Chinese fleet turned back. The immediate crisis was over, but the message was clear. China could project power deep into America's strategic zone. The US had to scramble a second carrier and confront a scenario it had long feared. The strategic calculus in the Pacific had changed forever. American naval supremacy was no longer guaranteed. China's expansion is a present reality, not a distant threat. The Pacific is now contested space. Was this standoff a glimpse of the future, the beginning of the end of uncontested American power at sea? The US Navy remains formidable, but the gap is closing fast. As China builds more carriers and perfects its missile technology, a historic transfer of power may be underway. The showdown is over, for now, but the challenge to American dominance has just begun. What do you think?